Hey guys, it's Matt. If you're driving or just listening, you don't need any video or images for this one. I'm going to read this email, which is from my cousin Bridget. She's an international school teacher in Colombia about the general CV situation in Colombia and Latin America. But before I do, I'm just going to go over to these images of clear and present danger. The only thing I know about Colombia is the Harrison Ford alley attack scene in Clear and Present Danger, where him and the white Suburbans get blown up in that alley. So I'm just going to put this image on because I didn't know what else to put on regarding Colombia. And generally, Google lets me put thumbnails up without banning my videos. So just here for a few minutes. If I keep the email on, people will start reading ahead. You know, that I'm sure that's just naturally what you want to do. And I'm going to read it all to you in just a moment. So, guys, just want to say one thing in the lead-in for a few minutes before I read the email. First off, the background. My cousin Bridget is not in our community at all, okay? She is a normie. She sits down and watches CNN, and every bit of it, of course, is completely real. Of course. Who would question it? And she knows I question a little bit of it. She doesn't really know exactly all the stuff I'm into, and she rolls her eyes at me. So we're talking about 100% normie. And it's interesting the way, at least in one section, something comes out of this email, which you'll see. So she's also been an international school teacher in Germany, as well as, I believe it was Marrakesh, Morocco, for several years, and now Colombia. But the first email she writes as to what the situation was in Colombia was the first night she flew in August. And I'll get to that in just a moment. About 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, a good segment, but still a relatively small segment of the truth community was saying, we are truly in a one world system here. All right. And I was in that camp pretty early on, about 4 years ago or so. I'm pretty much talking about a one world system. These leaders that pop up on television, oh, sure, they make a lot of decisions locally, just things that don't matter in terms of anything that matters in terms of who's going to enter World War I, who's really upset about what happened to Archduke Ferdinand or what's happening now. They don't make, this is a true one world system. These leaders don't make any decisions. And if there was any question about that, this CV thing proves it 100%. And to the one person screaming at me, trying to scream through their computer, I can hear you. What are you saying? Sweden? Oh, Sweden. Somebody's screaming at me, says Sweden. So the person that was screaming Sweden is like, how do you do that? How do you do that? Oh, I know what you're going to say. Sweden, give me a break. Give me a break. Now, I don't even, maybe they're in full mask lockdown. I don't know, but for months they were, everything was normal, outdoor cafes, nobody in masks. The New World Order needs a control mechanism. The Whopper computer, that has a digital twin representation of you, actually you, with your actual social security number, your digital twin, and what's occurring in the Whopper simulation needs a control. They need a country doing things differently. They'll need it in the plot of this thing at some point. But Matt, that's not proven out. Don't you think they'd want to make Sweden into, if that was the case, wouldn't they want to make Sweden into a disaster case as to how ravaged a country can become if we're not following the protocols? Can't get in their creepy head. I'm just saying there were no leaders in Sweden that just decided on their own not to do it. It's just not possible. It's a one world system. We know that now. So, we suspected it 4 or 5 years ago. President O, and his, I'll say wife, I don't know, President O, and can you see, I can't say the full name because this is not very positive in his direction. And that would cause in a country that prides itself on the First Amendment of free speech, that would cause this video to be banned. So President O and his wife, as I've said many times, or whatever, maybe you don't like the word wife, they decided what to serve for dinner. My favorite example is when the Japanese ambassador came in, they served Kobe beef. Kobe beef can be up to like $60, $80 a pound. And they were allowed to decide that. But in terms of anything important as to what the United States is going to get into, nah, they didn't decide that. Trump did. Nah, he didn't decide that. he hid Easter eggs for the lawn Easter egg hunt, but that's about it. Absolute puppets, and extends all over the world. At this point, I'm saying with no exceptions. There are countries that are just 2-bit whatever that this system just doesn't care about. They can't have their thumb on everybody at the same time. But for the most part, there's nothing that escapes this system, and this CV situation playing out our window for a year proves everything we suspected 4 or 5 years ago. Okay. So Bridget, my cousin, writes me. First email was probably early December. I think the second one was probably in early February. Okay, I went back to her and asked for a little bit more information. And when appropriate, I will stop a few times and explain a few things here. So Bridget says, and going into the first time arriving in Colombia, when I arrived in Colombia, it was basically on a humanitarian flight, and the airport was officially closed. Guys, I'm going to stop again. I will not stop very much, I promise. But I have to explain this. Humanitarian flight, the United States wasn't sending humanitarian aid for CV or anything like that into Colombia. These, quote, humanitarian flights, probably through USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, they've been going out to these countries in Latin America, Central America, Africa for decades. And my cousin is able to, for free, jump on board the regularly scheduled humanitarian flight that's been sending your tax dollars to these countries for many, many decades. She just jumps on for free, like somebody being going to their Peace Corps assignment for 2 years would be able to jump on a USAID flight for free. That's what's happening here. So, okay, when she arrived in Colombia, her, by herself, with her little girl, the airport was officially closed. We were the only plane that landed that night, as far as I could tell, August 20th. The airport was dark, nothing open, and there were people in full hazmat suits directing us in Spanish, like a sci-fi movie, she writes. And again, I guess I said it, but she's a normie, all right? She's a normie. She's saying it was surreal. Long single file line to customs, everybody 2 meters apart. So I'm just going to pause for a second. Could you imagine your first, you've heard all the stories about Colombia, the drug trade. It's got to be a little scary for anybody. A retired John Rambo going to live down there flying and would be a little bit uneasy. My cousin Bridget with her little girl, the first time during the CV craziness, black, dark airport, guys in full hazmat suits come out. I mean, I give her credit. It's amazing. She didn't just like flee back on the plane and say, I'm going back. So it says here, she had to quarantine in a hotel for 2 weeks. They were still on a lockdown in Colombia, so you could only shop every other day based on the last number of your ID card or passport. Things have relaxed since then. You can shop anywhere, but they take your temperature before walking in and encourage hand sanitizer upon entering. Masks are mandatory everywhere. Before school, she's in Bogota, the city, guys. We can't speak for what the outskirts are like, where they grow the plantains. We don't know, but at least in the city, masks are mandatory everywhere. Before school, we go on an app to record if we have any symptoms. It's a checklist, and you get a green smiley face saying you're safe, or you get a red unhappy face. With the red face, you cannot come to school that day. There's a hand washing station at the entrance, and they take our temperature. They check temperature when we leave school, too. There are hand washing stations all over the school, and we wash hands all the time. Kids must be 2 meters apart. My class is in 3 groups that come on different days. We only play in our designated part of the playground each day, which rotates: sand pit, soccer field, swings, etc. Masks are worn all day. Shops and most restaurants are open. Bars are open. I've been to bars 3 Friday nights. We sat outside every time. So far, I had 1 kid pulled out when his sister was suspected of being in contact with someone who might have been positive. That's a stretch. I'm going to read that one again. We've had some teachers miss days for the same reason. Well, it certainly sounds, with Matt interjecting here, it certainly sounds like the whole school is being decimated by this thing, completely decimated. People just hanging on their last breath. So she has this class in the city, a very, very crowded city, Bogota, several million people. And if I asked Bridget here, what's the extent of people dropping over? She said, we've had one kid pulled out when his sister was suspected of being in contact with someone who might have been positive. Wow, that's like the ending of Conan the Destroyer. A guy knew somebody's cousin's, uncle's, brother's, sister's nephew. And they weren't even dropping over themselves. They were suspected of being positive. Have you encountered anybody over the last 20 years with a sniffly nose? What? I mean, are you kidding me? This is the extent of how her school's being ravaged by the killer. I mean, but she doesn't understand. She's just completely normal to her and everybody else. We're just conspiracy jerks, you know? It doesn't matter what your experience is as you look around you. All that matters is what the news presents. And I've said that to my father. I said, well, stop quoting me statistics of what Wolf Blitzer's giving you and look around. 15 people in their 70s. They still here? Yeah. They sick? No. There's something making people sick, but do you understand? It's not what the news says. No. Matt, the news presents statistics. I mean, these people, every day I'm more and more convinced of the download. Let me continue to read. The Colombian government is taking it seriously, and people are being responsible. Understand the normie who's writing this, okay? The kids, they're 6 years old, so masks are their, quote, normal. And we remind of them all the time to social distance. Check this out. We call it zombie distance, and they put their arms out in front like zombies. Very interesting here. Very interesting. Now, all these protocols and the way people are behaving, we see it as a further zombification of the populations in the world. But there's a normie, and this kind of sneaks out, We talked about the different aspects of people trying to get out, spiritual aspects or unconscious, subconscious, being in most people completely overwhelmed and controlled by the brainwashed frontal lobes and the ego. But somehow this still sneaks out. The fact that people are being zombified. Of course, she wouldn't interpret what she's writing the way I'm interpreting it, but it's very interesting that even she would see. They call it zombie distance. Very interesting. It's like when she was writing this, just a little part of her that this system's out to extinguish is trying to get out. And she wrote, they call it zombie distance. But anyway, I forget my mask all the time after snack or lunch, and they remind me, Miss Mick, your mask, in their Spanish accents. Colombians think there might be another lockdown soon, but the last one was really hard on the economy, so who knows? There are already a large number of Venezuelan homeless in Bogota as it is. And I haven't talked about Venezuela for many years. But guys, just to do a 1 minute before I go on to the second email that she sent me here, which is very redundant to the first email. Venezuela should be basically the richest country in the world. Oil supplies, the crops that grow, the lush, fertile soils. Why this system is destroying it or has destroyed it, I don't know. Again, I don't know, but it's worth looking at. Again, another update on what's going on in Venezuela. This system, this one world system, destroyed it, and never really got to the bottom in this community as to the specific reason why it was intentionally destroyed. There's no way you can't mismanage that many resources. Per square mile, the amount of natural resources, ways that country can make money, farming, agriculture, oil, it makes any other country look like devoid, like one of the stands. So it had to have been intentionally destroyed on purpose. They'll tell you about Chavez and Maduro, and come on, that's just it's just a story so people believe that it was just mismanagement and just the dictators. That's what did it. Okay, to finish, I can't speak for all of Colombia or South America, but I can give you my experience. Everyone wears masks here in Bogota. I don't know about fines, but they probably exist if you're persistent in not wearing. Masks are worn all day in school, even in my class of 6 and 7-year-olds. Doesn't bother my class. It is their normal. 2 meters apart all the time. Toys are sanitized each night. Most Turbo Man sanitized every night. Most anything the kids touch are either sanitized or not touched for at least a day. Yeah, that's hard science there. We have any more sanitizer for Turbo Man? No, we'll just sit him in the corner for 2 days. Whatever's on him will die off. You know, the science of it. But it wasn't alive to begin with. How's it going to die off? I don't know. It will. Put Turbo Man back in the corner. Nobody touch him. You know, if you just I have relatives that would do that. You know, this ridiculous stuff of getting groceries, or the groceries are delivered, and then they have to let it sit. They have to let it sit in the garage because whatever's on it will die off and just peel off. You know, if they could get special glasses and view it. Is it dying off? They would. I mean, it's zombification of a population. When I got here, we were in lockdown. I had to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel like Nige in China. Since that initial lockdown, the city has been more relaxed, but we went into another lockdown for a few weeks in January. Restrictions on when you can purchase alcohol in bars and restaurants are on limited hours. I went out twice on weeknights for birthday celebrations during lockdown. The bars were closing at 8 o'clock. That sounds like a Montreal curfew. It's not only one word. Montreal is sharing ideas with Colombia. But in Montreal, they fine you $3,000 if you go out after 8 o'clock. Did the assistant ski instructor, did Trudeau, whatever, did he take that away yet? Oh yeah, the freedom loving people of the world. Also during lockdown and continuing since we went from code red to code orange recently, you can only shop every other day. My Colombian ID ends in an even number, so I can only shop on odd days. Well, that makes sense. Should we make it easy on people? If your passport number or your ID number ends in even, you can shop on even days? Well, no, do the opposite of what would be intuitive. She can only shop on odd days. In code red, only one family member could shop, but now that's been lifted. To fly, you need a COVID test. Hope this info helps. People generally do what the government says here. Bridget, people generally do what the government says here, everywhere around the world, except Yemen. Somebody emailed me from Yemen. They were like, this is the market. Look, there's just people walking around. Nobody's doing anything different. Nobody's covering up. Crowded market in Yemen. The V just decided not to go there. It was very polite of the V just to get together with itself, the clans that represent the V, maybe the different strains, and just say, should we go back to Yemen? Nah, let's leave those poor devils alone. And it just, Yemen's just normal life. And then the person in Yemen said to me, they just kind of, well, how do they explain that away to everybody? And they just explain it, through anything related to the government, that, oh, that's a Western thing. That's just something that the West is to deal with. We're magically immune here, or it's decided not to come here. So what is this? Just a code red, code orange, code red. Why is that familiar to me? It's from, they gave him a code red in, what's the movie with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson? A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. They code redded the guy, right? Santiago, before he took his flight out in the morning, took down Colonel Jessup. Anyway, guys, it's a one world system, and even the little fat man in Pyongyang, he's part of it. He's the biggest actor of them all. I mean, I don't think there's any part of this world that is basically doing its own thing, unless it's, and if they are or appear to be doing their own thing, it's just a forgotten part of the world where this system just doesn't give a shit. There's nothing that escapes it. There's no way regular human beings could coordinate the type of lockstep protocols and things being put in place over the CV worldwide. There's no such thing as countries. I don't care what. I don't care. If anything, the Chinese representatives come in. It's like when the five families meet. The five families meet. Don Corleone. They bad example because they end up fighting with each other. But for a lot of the time, they're working together. At the very minimum, they come together. And I don't mean the G7 or any of these conferences, or now it's G11 or whatever. It's probably G711, where they show you their meeting in the backroom meetings. If it's not, I mean, it is a one world system, but at the very minimum, they all come together and work together and strategize together. This is why the people that use the excuse about the Apollo missions and, well, Matt, the Soviet Union would have exposed that if it was no, because they were faking it themselves. It's all one system. It's not anyway. People still in this community think Vladimir Putin is he's pushing back against the Khazarian. No, they're all working together. Okay, this is just obvious at this point. Obvious. Go listen to Benjamin Fulford if you want to. Thanks a lot. Bye.